This is By the Numbers, a podcast brought to you by the University of South Alabama's Mitchell College of Business. Welcome to By the Numbers. I'm Dion Castor, and I run the Marketing and Communications Department here at Mitchell College of Business. Today, we're talking to Dr. Alex Sharland, who's a professor of marketing and international business. And with me is Shane Monagle and Brian Shirley, who are MBA students here at Mitchell College of Business. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Here you go.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Dion. This is me, Shane.
And me, Brylan.
And today we're joined by Dr. Alex Sharland, and we're going to get started by talking a bit about your early life and education. So, can you share a bit about your upbringing and how it influenced your academic path?
Ooh, big question. Upbringing. I lived in England on and off until I was 32 actually, was when I moved to this country the last time. But I was an exchange student in 79, and I came back and did my MBA in the 80s, and then I came back again in 90 to do a PhD.
And where did you do your exchange?
State University of New York, SUNY at Brockport, or SUC at Brockport as it's officially called, so right up there on the border with Canada. I've still got some friends from that time. We get together every now and again, and during the pandemic I went up there, and we tried to get into Canada. They wouldn't let us in. Apparently our reputation preceded us.
Oh, gosh.
So, I grew up in England at a time of social upheaval, although there always seems to be social upheaval in Britain. There is now. But inflation. I was 15 when the oil crisis hit, and that made a big difference to a lot of things. 73 was also the time that Britain entered the European Union. Of course, that's changed too. And we got rid of the old pound and got rid of the old money and got the new money, pounds and 100 pence instead of 240 pence. And that was a massive, because it led to inflation. It doubled down on the inflation. So. Played a lot of cricket, played a lot of rugby.
Oh, cool.
That made a big difference on me.
Yeah.
But I moved I started secondary school in Worcestershire at a boarding school, and they closed it, not because of me, truly. Then I went to London, South London, Croydon, then to Bromley, lived in Beckenham, then was there for 3 years. Then we moved to Ipswich. My father's job moved to Ipswich, so I went to a school out there, Framlingham College, don't you know? There's a bit of a story there, but I won't bore you with it. And then spent 2 years there, worked for a year, then went to university up in Scotland.
Wow.
Met a whole bunch of people in Scotland. That's when I did my 1 year exchange. 77 went to Scotland, 79 went to New York, back to Scotland. Then I did my MBA, went back to England. I was offered a PhD chance while I was at Virginia Tech. That's where I did my MBA, Southwestern Virginia. But I decided I needed some work experience first. And so I went back to England, got a job in banking, moved a couple of banks, started off with a nasty wet monster, otherwise known as the National Westminster, and went to Commerzbank. I spoke a little German, enough to get me into jail, but not enough to get me out. And then I learned more German while I was working there. Worked there for just under 5 years. I know it was just under 5 years because my pension didn't vest when I left. It was a 5-year vesting period. So there was a cash payout, and then came and did a PhD at Florida State.
Nice. Well, through this crazy journey and all this travel, what initially sparked your interest in international business and marketing? Was it during your MBA that you decided that that's what you wanted to pursue?
My MBA, I actually had majors of marketing and finance, so I guess it was before that. But my undergraduate degree was in economics and history. Oh. So somewhere in between the two.
Yeah.
I started off with economics and history at Stirling, and the reason I ended up in Stirling was because there were only 4 universities in England at the time that had majors in economics and history. One of them was Oxford, and they weren't going to let me in. That's for
yeah, it's not very easy to get into there. Not very easy.
Kiel, which is just north of Birmingham, Aberystwyth, which is a little island just off Wales towards Ireland, Stirling and Leeds were the four. And I toured them. No, I didn't go to Aberystwyth. And toured them with my father. It was one of the few trips I really had with my father on my own. And he had an old friend who lived there. And that kind of almost tilted the balance in favour of Stirling. So that's why I ended up there. And so I guess it was between there, going to Stirling, and then going to Virginia Tech that my interest in marketing and finance came along.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, because we had Dr. Alvin Williams on last week, and he talked about in his MBA and his undergrad, he was so dead set in economics. He had a professor that just, showed him a different line in economics, and he loved it. And then he went into his PhD and marketing. He had a professor in marketing that just completely changed his perspective. So how did your doctoral journey at FSU change your perspective, or did you know going into that you want to be in marketing?
Well, you had to apply for a specific place. So having done marketing and finance in MBA and then gone into banking, which is effectively marketing and finance. I was a corporate banker. So I was working with German companies based in the UK. So I would do anything from £50,000 to $200 million.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's a pretty wide range, but that was the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So that was my corporate interest. And I carried that over. But I also had to apply for a place in the marketing department for PhD level. But I also got accepted eventually. I got accepted at several places, but FSU was the first one to offer me money, which was going to be integral to the whole thing.
That is good incentive always.
Yeah.
And then University of Washington came in after I had accepted that. Now, had they come in at the same time, I would have gone to Seattle without a question. But that's another subject for a different place.
Yeah. Well, kind of moving forward from your educational journey and more into your career, some of your past jobs. We know that you've taught at Barry University in Miami, Florida, and also Hofstra University in New York. What were some memorable experiences that you had from teaching there? I know it's a lot of years and probably a lot of awesome memories, but if you just have one or two things that happened to you while you were there,
I had lots of things that happened to me while I was there.
Share a little bit about that.
I was at Barry for 5 years, went to Hofstra for 3.5 years, then went back to Barry for 6 years, or 5.5 years.
Oh.
So, lots of things. I was in my mid-30s when I went there the first time, and I was in my early 40s when I went back to Barry. So, and in that period, we, not just me, of course, we had children. My kids are now 29, just about to turn 30. My son is just about to turn 27. And my middle child, believe it or not, there's a middle child, and she's 28. So in 4 days, it will be 27, 28, 29. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's good timing.
Yeah.
But it's also pretty exhausting.
Yeah, I'm sure it was at the time.
It's a good job I was in my 30s and not my 40s, because I probably would have dropped over dead.
Yeah.
But, it was a very, very busy time. I lived in Fort Lauderdale and drove down to Fort Lauderdale. I drove down to Miami, and the nature of that made a huge difference to both my life and my teaching, because I would teach graduate school at night, 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and then get in my car and drive home. And that was, on a good day, it was a 30-minute drive. On a bad day, it was an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, you never know what kind of traffic you're going to run into there, especially during spring break and things like that.
The Golden Glades was under construction. The Golden Glades is the big interchange where the Turnpike, I-95, the 836 all come in all at the same place. And so, it could be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And there really aren't that many ways around it. So, it made a big difference, and especially if you taught on a Tuesday night and you had a Wednesday morning class, that made a huge difference to the teaching. Students were, for the most part, When I started off, the students were very international. Lots of Bahamians, lots of Trinidadians, quite a few Jamaicans. The student population was drawn not so much from the local area, but very much the American students tend to come from Boston and Chicago. It's kind of funny because it was a run by nuns, Adrian Dominican nuns, and they would sell themselves as a safe place for the daughters to go.
Well,
And the irony of that is, of course, the daughters knew exactly how far it was to South Beach. And so, as far as the parents were concerned, okay, it's safe to send them there.
Yeah,
And the
they're
daughters
safe
were saying,
while they're
thinking,
at school.
school big
Yeah.
time. And so they would hang on South Beach with the University of Miami boys.
Oh no.
And it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because I would hear so many different silly stories coming out of that whole milieu.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who would have seen
I'm
that
sure.
coming? Probably everyone but the nuns.
No,
Yeah.
they definitely didn't see that one coming. You can't protect.
I'm not
them on the
going to
weekends.
even touch the subject of the nuns. Elian Gonzalez featured prominently in that because Sister Jean was chosen as his temporary guardian while the courts decided whether he would go back to Cuba with his father or would stay in Miami with his relations. His mother died. Elian Gonzalez was a young boy whose mother died. And so Sister Jean Kirkpatrick was the president of Barry University, and she was chosen as the guardian, temporary guardian. So yeah, Barry University hit the big time then. And I had just left. I mean, I knew all the characters because I had literally just walked out. It was 2000, no, it was 1998. That's when I left, 1998.
Year before I was born.
OMG.
What the heck?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And then what brought you to South Alabama after Hofstra and Barry?
When I went into the market, there were a number of Florida state schools and Florida private schools in 2007, when I was looking, were not looking. Once you get to a certain level, associate professor is probably the level, full professor too, to a certain extent, your mobility and your ability to move is attenuated by the fact you've achieved a certain level. If you're at assistant level, you've got much more flexibility in movement. But once you've reached associate, and I was a senior associate at that stage, you had to fit a profile. And nobody in the state system was looking. Nobody in the private system that I was prepared to go to was looking. So then I had to look in Georgia and then Alabama. So when I went to the Washington, D.C., I made a series of interview appointments with South Georgia universities, with University of South Alabama, with St. John Fisher University, which is in Rochester, New York, because I had been there and I still had friends up there.
Yeah.
There were others, but I really wasn't that. You take whatever you can get as an interview, and then you make your mind up after that. For instance, University of Indiana, South Bend was one on the list, but that wasn't going to happen either. But so anyway, USA came through.
Yep.
I was very close to accepting a position at St. John Fisher University, which is a pretty good school, Rochester, New York, private. But USA called me while I was meeting with the dean. Mohan Menon was the
While
chair.
you were in New York, they called
While
you?
I was in New
Oh.
York, sitting in the dean's office, talking to him.
They were stalking you. Like, okay.
Yeah, they may have slipped something into my phone.
We're gonna get this guy. We're
But
gonna get him. We want him.
I used to have a candy bar telephone. I don't know if you can even remember those. No, I didn't have an aerial, but it was a candy bar. And, it was kind of funny. It went off in my pocket. And I thought,
Let me take this.
Probably take the whole room down with
Okay.
vibration, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the area code of the number. I'm thinking, back away from being so enthusiastic with this upstate New York job.
Yep.
I'm sure I would have enjoyed it because it was a good
Oh,
school.
yeah.
And the dude who was the other side of the table from me, he was, totally upfront, and I was totally upfront with him. So yeah, that's how I ended up at USA.
Awesome. And I mean, are you loving it so far? I mean, you've been here about
16 years.
16
This
years.
is my 16th year.
You love it. You love the weather and all that. I mean, just the nature itself is a lot better here than New York, from my personal opinion.
I couldn't afford to live in New York. Not
Okay,
with three
yeah.
small children.
Yeah.
We bought a house. My property taxes when I bought the house were $2,800 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Within 2 years, they gone up to $5,600
Oh,
a
gosh.
year. And Nassau County was bankrupt, and so they were going to raise property taxes on houses on our street to $8,000 a year,
Dang.
which was more than the mortgage payment.
Yeah, yeah.
And my salary was not
No.
meeting this. So I just couldn't afford. With three small children, when I got there, they were 1, 2, 3. When I left, they were 4, 5, 7, something like that. And we had just pulled them out of school, and 9/11 occurred. 9/11. My kids were in the front room watching TV because they weren't at school.
Were you living in New York at
Yeah,
the time?
at
Oh,
the
wow.
time.
That's
And because we had pulled them from school because we were imminent to sign contracts and drive south.
Mhm.
I was going to continue to work at Hofstra on a Monday and a Wednesday and fly back up on a Monday morning, teach at 1 o'clock, teach at 6 o'clock, teach 8:30 to 11 on a Wednesday night, then catch a Thursday morning flight back to
man.
Fort Lauderdale. And I did that for a while. That's what I did. But yeah, 9/11 occurred at exactly that moment, and the whole of New York life changed.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
People on my street died, and one of my students died.
Really.
He had an internship at a bond dealer, bond trader, who was at the top of one of the towers.
Oh my God.
He was told, don't show up until about 9:30, but he said he wanted to show, he was told
Yeah,
his
he
colleagues
wanted-
he wanted to show he was keen,
Yeah.
he got there
Get
early.
there early. Yep. Gosh.
and he was trapped at the top.
That's
It's
a
a
sad
deep
story.
shame, sad story. I lost a number of people I knew.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people did. There's so many people in both of those buildings. I mean,
Yep,
it's very sad.
it is.
Well, kind of moving on from that.
Moving right along.
What classes are you currently teaching here at South?
Well,
I know
I'm
you teach our class.
Yeah, I'm
and we're
torturing
loving
you
it so
two.
far.
What am I teaching right now? Undergraduate Marketing 310, Introduction to International Business, essentially Principles of International Business. And then I teach, so that's for late sophomore, early juniors. Then I teach a Marketing Majors capstone course, which is writing intensive. It's not listed as that. As you know, in this university we have W courses, which means writing intensive. And it's not a W course, but I make it W. But it's research intensive.
Yeah.
So instead of doing lecture, exams, and that sort of thing, they're doing research papers.
Papers, yeah.
And they're doing it on subjects that we agree. We talk about it. Then
Yeah,
we,
you're not just like forcing them to write about something you tell them to. They can.
No,
go
we
about it
have a
their own
give and
way.
forth. And this
Yeah.
last one, I've
That's
told
nice.
them, if you've
That's
got
really nice.
if you've got something you want to use as you go out and try to find a job, tell me what it is. Otherwise, I will give you something.
Yeah.
And what I will give them, we just talked about it yesterday, is Belt and Road Initiative. I'm not sure if either of you are
I've
familiar with
never
it.
heard of that. No.
It's a Chinese bank, effectively, where the Chinese government bankrolls construction in different countries. So if you go to different countries around the world, you'll find that there are Chinese companies building airports, ports, roads, tunnels, that sort of thing. That's called the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a Xi Jinping thing. And it's, for instance, if you go to Kenya, I believe that the Chinese government is Kenya's largest creditor right now. But if you go to Sri Lanka, you will find that the country was bankrupted partially by the Belt and Road project at the port there.
Oh man.
So it's a very, very big business issue right now, but we're going to do it with a focus on Africa. And there are a number of other things. So North Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, and East Africa. And so that's what we'll do.
Yeah, interesting. And with your teaching, with your classes, what's your favorite part about teaching? I know being in your class, me and Brian, we say it, it's probably the most engaging class so far. It's one we probably feel we can talk the most and actually
Yeah.
express our
definitely.
opinions. Is that kind of your style of teaching? Is that how you
Oh,
like to
yeah.
get the best set of students?
Yeah. One of the things I tell my students, especially in that 310 class, I've told them, listen, you've had 14 years of shut up and listen,
Yeah, exactly.
and then take a multiple choice exam.
We're tired of it.
which is a gross overstatement. No, it's not a gross overstatement. It might be an overstatement. But it's unfortunately in batch mode education, where everybody moves at the same time through the education process. It's almost like Henry Ford's production line. They move through simultaneously. That's the only way to effectively and efficiently make sure people get through the process. And of course, the outcome is very, very different. But that's not the way I want to teach. I never have done. I've never given a multiple choice exam in my life. From 1993, when I started as an assistant professor, it's always been essays, always. And papers, essays, and in particular projects. So you two are suffering at my hands right now. And every class that I teach has a very specific outcome which is related to a product. So you will produce something. So in my undergraduate class, they do, the first one, they do data analysis.
Yeah.
And they go from me giving them the data and them analyzing the data to me giving them a subject, and then they identify the variables, they identify the countries they want to analyze, they find the data, then they analyze the subject. So it's a tool that they will use again and again in their lives. In my 492 capstone course, they are becoming much more proficient at framing issues, researching issues, and then writing reports. And I actually got a very good feedback from one student from last year who found his dream job exactly because of what he had done in my class. We had done an analysis of Chinese supply chains, and the company he worked for, or now works for, as I understand it, they're even paying for his flight lessons. He wants to become a pilot.
What?
He asked for that as part of his compensation package, and they paid for it.
It's a good work-life balance right
Yeah,
there.
it is. It really is.
So, but yeah, he came to me and he said that, you know, I got this because of what you gave
Yeah,
us
you
to
introduced him to it.
do. Yeah.
But there's actual elements of practicality. I know we were talking about in class last night, we were talking about, I think you asked Trip, you know, how often you have to cite things for you for work. Like, work isn't like that. You're not writing academic papers for work. I thought at one stage Brandon was going to cite his child, like his name, I'd say, on the report from his wife.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, there's an overabundance of that in, you know, where did you get this information? And the fact is, in business, we don't care.
Yeah.
We know that somebody said something to us at a restaurant while we were having a client dinner. There's no provenance.
Like, we just need some good information. We don't really care how you got it.
There's no
Just make
provenance.
sure it's-
There's no provenance to that.
Yeah.
You know, and besides which, what are you going to say? I was 3 sheets of the wind, and so anyway, but you know, in academic papers, it's very important to cite. And so, but you know, when you're going, so last night we talked about Statista, we talked about IBISWorks, and all of that good stuff. You can just cite that as your source because that's where you got it. Where they got it from, you don't care.
It'd be perfect if you know you want to work in research for the rest of your life, but 95 to 99% of the people doing an MBA course are going into
I'm
the
not
real
going to do a
world.
PhD or some advanced degree beyond that.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So anyway, engaging, yes, that's important. The other thing is, one of the most important things about the MBA, I was ruminating on this morning because I was reading something in the headlines. The MBA is a degree where the content is pretty much the same wherever you go. The classes have been the same in the MBA programs now for 70 years. There have been some adjustments. But the MBA was developed at Harvard, and the curriculum has pretty much continued.
Stayed the same.
And but the value of the MBA, and the reason that Harvard and Penn, Wharton, Yale, blah, blah, can charge as much as they do is not because of the curriculum, it's because of the cohort effect, who you get to meet. But
Yep.
if all you're
Yep.
doing is sitting there looking at a professor, the sage on the stage, and then writing either a paper or this, that, and the other, you're not interacting. And so one of the things I built into my class, and you've been through it, is I put you in groups.
Yeah.
I force you into groups that you don't
Yeah, people
know.
you've never talked to before. So
Precisely.
you can build new connections.
New
Yeah.
connections and new loops,
Mhm.
because you don't know, in 4 years' time that person might come to you and say, okay, I'm looking to change, or you may be looking to change,
Yep.
and you need a contact, and they're in that industry. They may not have a position in their organization, but they
can
know
get you-
somebody
yeah.
who knows somebody.
Yep.
And so it's as much who you know as what you know. You see, people assume, certainly on my side of the street, people assume that all the athletes know each other. But the fact is that you're a pretty big cohort in this university, and especially now that we've got a football team. Because when I got here, there was no football team. There was a football club. There was a football club, and they would practice just before the rugby club would practice. And I was the first women's rugby team coach, because nobody else could do it. And the guy who was organizing it is now the chief of police for the federal courthouse downtown. His name is Charles Doobie. Doobie and I have been friends for a while, and he said, will you do this? And I said, yes, I can do it for the fall, but I can't do it for the spring because I teach Tuesday and Thursday nights, and that's practice night. So the football club will be there, and then we kick them off the field, and we would do the practice. And
It's the
so,
ladies' turn now.
yeah, and so
Get
I
our
was.
way. We'll run you over.
So, yeah, I was, but I think it was about 2012, 2013, South considered a football team.
Mhm.
And it's grown from there to where it is now, which is over the 10 years, I guess it is. It's certainly more significant. I don't know the extent
Yeah,
to
I
which
mean,
it's
they
grown.
they built the entire stadium. I mean, they're starting to pack it
Well, the
out.
clubhouse wasn't there. The clubhouse
Yep.
wasn't there. Where the stadium is now is where the intramural fields used
Yeah,
to be.
Yeah.
I remember that whenever I first got here, my freshman year, they were still there.
Yep.
I would go out and, play ultimate frisbee and things like that, right there where the
Okay.
stadium is.
They were terraced.
Yeah.
We would be on the bottom part, and then you would be playing those games up on the top part.
Hmm.
Yep. So, and South hosted a number of rugby championships there because, as you know, I'm in the rugby community. I think that's in the.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
But,
here soon.
So anyway, yeah. How did we get into this? I told you got to do this. Oh yeah, engagement in the class.
Yes, yes. That is how we got
That's
there.
how we got there.
So we were reading up some of your most recent work focuses on the Sovereign Wealth Fund
Mm-hmm.
and their impact on small islands and Caribbean economies.
Mm-hmm.
What initially inspired this research? It's a very almost niche, I would say. So what got you into this?
It is and it isn't, in a sense, because sovereign wealth funds have an enormous impact on people's lives and they're not even aware of it. It depends what you define as a sovereign wealth fund. So the retirement system of Alabama is a fund into which all state employees pay. And there are different. There's a teachers fund and there's a other workers fund. And so you pay into the fund and it's managed. Okay, well that's the principle of the sovereign wealth fund. I've been dealing with sovereign wealth funds for over 30 years, mostly on the academic side. I was aware of the Kuwaiti Investment Office in London because they would feature in the Financial Times. My routine every day was to get into work by 8 o'clock, which put me an hour ahead because it's a 9 o'clock city. Work begins at 9 o'clock, but I would get there at 8, and I would read the Financial Times cover to cover. But what I was really looking for was stuff on my clients, and I would cut it out and put it in the file and yada, yada, yada. But there were these articles about the Kuwaiti Investment Office, which is the London investment arm for the Kuwaiti Investment Authority, and that is the Kuwaiti Sovereign Wealth Fund. So I've been aware of sovereign wealth funds for, I don't want to tell you how long, 37 years maybe. And sovereign wealth funds do things at the local level. For instance, they pay for programs. They pay for infrastructure. So Singapore, for instance, I went to China in 2007. I went to Shanghai with a group of students from Barry University, and we
Like a
visited.
study abroad trip, or
It was a course.
oh,
It was a course trip. So I guess it was study abroad, but it was a bit weird because we had people from human resource management, which was located on the west coast of Florida, and students from the main campus, that was where I was, on the east coast of Florida. So anyway, we ended up there with about 25 students, and we went to Suzhou Park, which is an industrial park just outside Shanghai. And it was originally built by Temasek. Temasek is one of two big Singaporean sovereign wealth funds. The CIF is an internal fund, and that invests in the infrastructure of Singapore, builds the ports, the roads, the electrification, and all of that good stuff. Temasek is outside Singapore, and they had developed this industrial park. The Shanghai local government and the national government had donated this land to the project, and then Temasek had provided the capital for the build-out. So the roads, the electrification, the buildings, the storage, etc., etc. If you go to just northeast of Columbus, Ohio, you can see an American version of that underway right now, just outside Columbus, because that's where the recent funding for chip manufacture, that's the chosen location. So they've cleared the trees, they've put they're putting the roads in, the ingress, the egress, and so businesses are popping up all around that.
Yeah.
Next, you're going to find accommodation being built because you're going to have 40, 50,000 people working there.
Yep.
And so that's all building. And that's what they did at Suzhou. And so Temasek built that effectively. And the Chinese then populated it. And it's an enormously successful industrial park. So I've kind of known about sovereign wealth funds for a long time. And then in 2019, I ended up going to a conference, presenting a paper in Tobago. And we, as part of our visit, we went around Tobago visiting a number of different things. And one of them was a plant analysis and research institute, I guess you would call it. And what they were doing is they were creating hybrid plants that would be better suited to the Tobagan ecology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was funded by the Heritage Fund, which is the Trinidadian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
So the factories, they were just running and emitting less pollution? Is that kind
No,
of
it was
or-
productivity yields.
Oh, okay, okay.
They were coming up with plants that would give a better yield on Tobago.
Yeah, okay.
Trinidad obviously it's two islands, Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad to the south is the bigger island, and just off the coast of southwest coast of Trinidad, there's oil.
Mm-hmm.
And the oil is it is pumped out by Venezuela, and then Venezuela pays Trinidad money. But a lot of the oil services are in Trinidad. So if you drive around that southwest corner of Trinidad, you'll find a lot of manufacturing, a lot of workers who work in the oil industry, a bit like Aberdeen back in the day.
Yeah.
And so, but Tobago is much more rural and touristy. Those are the two drivers in the Tobagan economy. And so, anyway, we were there. I was there with some colleagues, and we decided. Well, realistically, he decided. He put together this data set, and he said, "Okay, here's the data. Now you write the paper on the front end of that." And between the two of us, we came up with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But I'd done some writing in it before.
Yeah.
That's why he did. That's why he did what he did, and then I did what I did, and score. You know.
Yeah. Was there any kind of surprising insights you found after researching into it?
Just about that time, Guyana discovered oil just off its coast. Prior to the discovery of oil, Guyana was very undeveloped, very tough place to live, gang violence, quite a lot of other violence. There's still violence there, but there's a lot of money there. And so where previously you could have booked a hotel room for $80 a night, now you can't get a hotel room for less than $500 a night.
Oh my.
And they're building
Slight
hotels
inflation.
as fast as they can because all of
Lord.
these oil executives need to stay somewhere.
And they have the money to pay $500 a night.
Well, but exactly, and so Guyana is now a boomtown,
Mm-hmm.
and that creates a big problem. So Guyana now has a sovereign wealth fund, but the question is, where does the money go? There's a lot of corruption in that field.
Okay, so that's kind of one of the
I
main
can
challenges
imagine.
it faces,
The
corruption.
Malaysian sovereign wealth fund experienced a loss of over $1 billion, and $780 million ended up in the Prime Minister's personal account.
Oh my.
What a coincidence.
I mean, he said, I have no clue how it got there.
All right, we'll send it back.
Well, it was taken back and he was sent to jail, but it was kind of funny. I have no clue how it got there.
2 hands up and looking around.
I mean, you've got to be very clumsy to make it that obvious, or
Yeah, yeah.
that arrogant.
Yeah.
You got to be
Gosh.
that arrogant. Neither of you have probably heard of the place called Neom. Neom. It's a brand new city that is currently under construction, but in Saudi Arabia. If you go up the Red Sea towards the Suez Canal on the right-hand side, pretty far up on the east side, they are currently building a pet project of Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, and it is going to be the city of the future.
Gosh.
And they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on this, and it is funded by the sovereign wealth fund. So if you want something interesting to do one day, go and look on Neom and what it's supposed to be. And
Gosh.
if you want to see a
City of the
university,
future,
go and look
I
at King Fahd University in Saudi Arabia. It is the bee's knees.
We built some towns in Ireland in kind of respect of like, we have low corporate tax rates, so we have a lot of companies, based in Ireland, like Google, I think they pay from tax in Ireland.
Apple's been there forever.
Intel, the whole
Oh,
lot. So
really?
we built some towns, like there's one called Adamstown, very creative. Now it's not multi-billion, I can tell you that, but it's funny, like these companies come in, they build towns, and the whole
like
life is built around.
everyone that works there lives there. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. That's popping up all over Ireland.
That's pretty cool.
Well, one of the reasons Ireland was chosen, English-speaking, relatively well-educated young people, a good fit.
Mm.
And so Apple went there a long time ago. I remember when it was being considered, because I've got some Irish friends from my time in Scotland. If you go to South Korea and you drive from Incheon Airport into the centre of Seoul, you drive past huge apartment buildings, and they've got the name of the company on the side.
Wow.
So Huawei, no, not Huawei, that's a Chinese company, excuse me.
Samson?
Sanyong, Samsung, Hyundai. Hyundai is the
Yeah,
biggest.
Yeah.
And you're driving past their corporate headquarters and their accommodations.
That's
And
incredible.
people have apartments there. Whereas what you're describing is probably people bought those, but with the
Yeah.
salaries that they...
Yeah.
The towns just kind of came alongside the companies just to
Mhm.
support what they needed for the people that were working there. But that's really interesting.
Yeah. So, we were talking earlier a lot about your interest in rugby and how you were a coach for a while. I think you said in class the other day that you're an official
Mhm.
for a couple different rugby leagues. So, what initially got you into rugby? Like, did you play as a child or about that tall? What, 5?
Until you kept growing.
4 or 5 years old? When
No,
you
I started playing rugby when I was 10.
10? That's probably a good age to start. You don't want any head injuries at the age of 5.
Well, when you're younger, when you're 4, 5, 6 in New Zealand, you play touch.
Oh yeah, okay, well that makes sense.
Or flag. I mean, in
Give
this
your
country,
brain
you will
some
play
time to
flag.
develop.
I'm not sure my brain ever really developed. But, beyond where it was when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I moved to a soccer school and made my way through that. But I played cricket. I played everything: hockey, cricket, rugby, badminton. I didn't play tennis. I didn't play golf. I was a cricketer. Preferred team sports to many things. And my family lived opposite a hockey and cricket club. So if you go to South East London, there's a belt of sports clubs. They belong to corporates, so banks, insurance companies, brokers, that sort of thing, big companies, they would own a sports club, and that's where they had teams that would play in leagues. The Metropolitan Police.
That's cool.
In and around London, you find that there are these places where they are hotbeds of sports, and we actually lived across from one.
Anybody could join.
Well, certain clubs, anybody could join. So, for
Yeah.
instance, Cyphers was the name of the club right opposite me, and so I joined Cyphers. I played for their
That's
fifth.
so cool, yeah.
I played for their fifths when I was 13, I think, 14.
The senior team, the fifth senior
No,
team.
the fifth team. Yeah, the fifth senior
Senior
team.
team,
Yeah,
yeah.
so the fifths.
Wow.
And so it was a bunch of 60-year-olds and 50-year-olds playing with a bunch of 13, 14, 15-year-olds.
The heavy hitters versus the
Yeah,
yes,
the risers versus the decliners.
the wrinklies versus the youngs.
But anyway, while I was at Hofstra, I was the coach of the Hofstra team.
Interesting.
So I coached at Tech. Barry never had a team. Coached at Hofstra. Came here, coached for the women. But I've been a referee now for 20 years.
Well, outside of rugby, do you have any other kind of side hustles or extracurricular activities?
I ride a motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw your leather jacket whenever you walked in, and you're wearing a do-rag right now. I know
Yeah.
we don't have the camera live today, but you guys should
Thank
see it.
goodness.
It's beautiful.
Thank goodness, I'd have cracked the lens. I ride a motorcycle, and I enjoy riding. So I ride down and visit my kids.
Hmm.
They live in Orlando, and I used
That's
to
a
do
long
that more
ride.
when all three of them live there, but one of them now lives in St. Louis. St. Louis is a bit far for me.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a 10, 11 hour ride, and when you ride, it's 2.5 hours. You got to give your backside a break.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
So, and as good as the bike is that I've got, it's the vibration gets to you after a while.
Mhm.
So you stop every 2.5 hours, and that's a 3-stop ride. Whereas going to Orlando, that's a 2-stop ride.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Stop, stretch.
stop, stretch, have a
Vigor.
cup of something,
Yeah.
and then get on the road. And the other thing is, I'm of an age now where I enjoy going up to the tail of the dragon, which is
Yes, I've heard a lot about that. I've
well,
always wanted to
that's
go.
the only one of the rides up there. There's the Devil's Triangle, there's the Moonshiner Run, there's the Dragon. So I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
I'll do that one more time with this bike, and then I'm going to take that bike down to Orlando, and I'm thinking of trading it in for a more sedate bike.
Cool. So the one you have right now, is it more of a chopper style?
Oh, absolutely
No,
not.
no.
No,
Just like a
no.
cruiser type bike?
It's a tourer.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a
okay.
sit up straight. The three
Yes.
types of bike. Lean forward,
Yeah.
that's for young guys like you.
Mhm.
Okay? I used to have
Crotch
one of those.
rockets, basically.
Yeah, well, I used to have one of those.
Yeah.
I used to have a Triumph 955,
Mhm.
and that was a beast.
Yeah.
Zero to death in 2 seconds.
Yeah. I had a Honda CRX something whenever I was 16 that I would drive to school.
You're lucky you survived.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm pretty safe. I mean, my dad taught me, the limits of what exactly could happen, so
Before
you
he
gotta,
found them.
you gotta have self-control
Yeah.
whenever you're behind the wheel on something like that.
Oh, I
mean,
got
same with
so many
fast
stories
cars
of
as well.
people riding bikes like R6s, and
Yeah,
it didn't end well.
You literally just have to have self-control. Like, you're gonna have the, intentions to do something crazy like that, but you just gotta,
Well, the
gotta
power
think
to
about
weight
your
ratio.
life. Like, okay, is going fast right now really worth what could happen? So,
Yeah, the power to weight ratio is so much in favor of speed
yeah.
that but anyway, so I'm going to go from there's lean forward. I have sit up straight now.
Mhm.
That's a tourer, and then lean back
Lean
is the
back.
cruiser.
Arms up.
Oh no! I'm not that laid
Not
back,
that thug.
but I will be leaning back. Tomorrow I'm driving to Pensacola to coach a referee.
Oh.
I'm
Oh,
going to
cool.
watch a referee in a game,
Mhm.
and my job I don't run anymore. I'm not able to.
Yeah.
So I will coach that referee. I'll write a report on him, and I'll drive. It's an hour there, 2 hours for the game, 2.5 hours for the game, then drive
Yeah.
back, and that's my day.
You gonna take your bike,
I thought
maybe just
about
drive.
it.
car?
I thought about it. It depends. I've asked a friend if he wants to go with me,
Mm-hmm.
but he hasn't got back to me as far as I'm aware. And I'm still thinking about it. I might
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah.
I might drive.
It's a good forecast. No rain.
It is. It looks
Yeah.
lovely. And if it were 5, 10 degrees warmer, I might. But once
Yeah.
you start riding, it's 10 degrees cooler. So if it's 70
Yeah,
degrees,
that's true.
70 degrees walking
And,
around,
yeah,
it's
the
60
drive-
degrees
the
on the
drive
bike.
back too. Yeah, it would be a lot more.
Oh, and I won't drink either.
No,
So
that's a shame.
you can't afford to. You just
Oh
can't
yeah,
afford to.
not driving. No.
Not if you're riding. So
Especially not that long of a drive.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Alex Sharland, for joining
Yeah,
us
that was
today
great. That was great.
for the second By the Numbers podcast.
Yes.
That's all from me, Shane.
And me, Brylan.
And you want to sign off with anything?
toodles.
And that's it. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to By the Numbers, brought to you by the Mitchell College of Business. Stay tuned. There'll be a new episode coming soon.